Okay, first of all, we want to thank all of you for coming to our first HITA webinar. And I'm not sure how many of you know about HITA, but you had to go on the website in order to register. Some people were registering incorrectly and they actually just joined HITA and never registered for the webinar. So I think we sent all of those people a link as well. But this, HITA is the Hawaii Interpreters and Translators Association. And it started way back in the 90s by one of my colleagues and my classmates. And we went through the conference interpreter training at the University of Hawaii Center for Interpretation and Translation Studies. So Yumiko actually is her name. Her last name was Smith, and she was in the Japanese program. And so she, along with some other colleagues, started this association. Then it flourished, and then it kind of went down and up and down. And so we decided we wanted to restart this association. And so we've been working really hard the last few years after COVID. And I'm the president. We also have the vice president the secretary with us, which is Patricia Rowland. Wave, Patricia. Patricia, if you could wave. Yeah, that's Patricia. So she's a secretary. She's also helping today with the technical issues in case we have any, and also letting people in and unmuting. So you could always write to her a text message if you have a problem. You can write to Patricia. We also have our secretary, I'm sorry, not our secretary. Are you? No, you're the secretary. Patricia's secretary. Our VP is Sandy. Hey, Sandy. Okay, and she is one of our speakers today, and she put this webinar together. So we really are excited. And if you do look on the webpage, the reason we started this HITA is because what is happening is that there is no place for training. And the reason I say that is the training and the collaboration among our colleagues, with our interpreter colleagues and translators colleagues, is really nowhere in Hawaii. We don't have a place. I know that those of you with Language Services Hawaii, we may do webinars from time to time or training from time to time, but it really is not the place. It really belongs in an association. When we began this Hawaii Interpreters and Translators Association, we started getting national recognition. We started getting emails from Florida and Texas and other places around saying, first of all, can we advertise on your webpage, because we have medical training and court interpreter training, and we have translation training. And so all of a sudden we started getting that, along with others who said, hey, maybe you want to join our conference or conferences here or there. And so we're really excited to have the Hawaii Interpreters and Translators Association put together, because it's for us, the interpreters and the translators. For example, today we're going to ask you at the end, what kind of seminars or webinars would you like to see? Maybe some of you say, I just want a party, let's get together. That's fine too. But if we are all a part of association, then you actually can write that on your resume, as well as it's a nonprofit. No, it's not there for anybody. It's for anyone. It's for individuals and anybody who wants to join. And also we get requests for, hey, do you have any Korean interpreters? And so, or translators, I have something to translate. We'll send it off to the Korean translators that are a part of our association. And so it might, you might be able to get more jobs and things like that if you're interested. So this is why we have an association. We don't meet that often, usually once a month, but it's the twice a month seminar webinar that we want to start holding. And our first one is today. So we're actually really happy that all of you could join us. But we also want to bring up anyone who is a part can volunteer for anything. You can even give a webinar and say, hey, I think we should talk about this or that, and we can all get together and talk about it. Today was brought up because Sandy said, I used to teach special ed, and I myself interpreted special ed and knows how difficult it is. And that's why we wanted to start off with this topic. So if you haven't had a chance, please head to our website, look around. It basically says the same thing. Let's collaborate, let's collaborate, let's collaborate. It is $20 a year. If you want to wait until October to sign up, it's only $10 through the end of the year. But starting in January, we're going to start over, and then it's $20 a year. And the reason is because we want to start doing things with that money. We want to send people to seminars or webinars or conferences, on the mainland. Patricia and I were lucky enough to go to Texas recently, and we represented Hawaii Interpreters and Translators Association. And we gave a talk about what we're doing here in Hawaii. And immediately the one person from the national board of the certification of medical interpreters, and another one from I forgot what it was, another association on medical interpreters, came up to me and said, I need to talk to you, and I need to talk to you right now. I'm like, oh, okay. And so we went outside, and she said, we had no idea that things are happening in Hawaii. We had no idea that Hawaii has interpreters and translators, and that you have groups going, you even have teaching happening. And guess what? We want to hold our next meeting, of the board. We go to different states, and Hawaii came up as a place to go. And we thought, nothing's happening in Hawaii. She said, because when we go as a board, we hold talks, and we are all experts in something. And so each of come because they'll pay for it, and we need to hear these things nationally. And so we're trying to get on the national board where people can see that we do have awesome interpreters and translators in Hawaii, and they're of languages that other states need. We also had somebody from Ohio come up and said, hey, does Hawaii have Micronesian languages and other languages? I said, we certainly do. We have everything, of the Pacific, and even more. And so I just wanted to let you know that the Hawaii Interpreters and Translators Association is causing people to take notice of the interpreting and translators here. And it's all for individuals. It's not for companies, or it's an individual association. So thank you all for joining our webinar and learning more about it. You may want to read more about it. We do have previous things that we have announced. And later on, you will have access, and I'll talk about this later, to the resources that we're putting up on our HITA webpage, not webpage, but our HITA website, in a private site that only those who have joined can have access to. For example, today we have a lot of resources about interpreting in education that we're putting up on a web page, on a Google site, that you will have access to if you join this, but you will also have access to other resources and things. So without further ado, I want to get started. And at the very end, we're going to have a lot of time for questions. So write down your questions. You can type them in the chat. You can also to write them down at the very end. You can ask your questions. But before we begin, I have a poll that I want to launch, and all you have to do is answer these questions, and you get a QR code. So what you can do is you can click on get a QR code, and you can use your camera, your phone camera, and answer these questions. That's the easiest way to do that. So otherwise, just click on yes, no, whatever, and go ahead and answer those questions. And as soon as you're done, please hit submit. Where's my video? Again, you should be able to see the poll and the survey. You should be able to see the poll survey. So go ahead and finish that. There's a lot of number 2, some of you will not be answering, but number 1, all of you should answer. And we only have 40% who have answered. So again, if you see the poll on the top, just click and then click submit. Anyone need more time? Anyone having problems seeing the poll? All right. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Everybody done? All right. I'm going to share the results so all of you can see. So we can see that half or let me go up to the top. Sorry. How many times have you interpreted at schools? We could see 33, a third of us have. Some have no experience at all. And then about 19, 20%, actually total of like 30%, 35% have. And then over 10 times, 30%. So only a third of you have not. And number 2, if yes, what percentage of your school has been for IEP meetings? So a lot or half or most of them. Okay, so IEP is a lot. And then the next one says, compared to other types of community interpreting, how would you rate interpreting? And then I don't know, easier, just as hard, harder, much harder. So easier, there was 13% or 19% thinks it's easier. And some just don't know. Okay, maybe you haven't had experience, and some say harder or just as hard. Okay, so I would say, yeah, okay. So let's see. I guess it also depends on your experience. And if you answered harder, please explain why. And then I think, I don't know where the short answers are. I don't even know how to find them. So anyway, there we go. All right. Thank you. So we're going to stop sharing and we're going to get on with this webinar. So let me explain now. Get out of there. Let me explain. Sorry, I'm going to give an introduction to our speakers today. First of all, we introduced Sandy. You can raise your hand again, Sandy. She's our VP. She's our vice president. She used to be president of HITA, and now she's our vice president of the American Hawaii Interpreters and Translators Association. She, some of you know, is a Spanish interpreter, although she has a Japanese background. She's a Spanish and a Portuguese interpreter. She interprets in the courts. She interprets in medical settings and every place you can imagine. She's been interpreting for many, many years. I met Sandy when I interpreted for an IEP meeting when she was a teacher at Roosevelt High School. And when I was finished, she came up to me and said, "Hey, I want to start interpreting. I'm going to retire soon. And how do I get involved?" And then I realized she actually is a conference trained interpreter at the Center for Interpretation and Translation Studies before I was even there. So we're really happy to have her. She's been interpreting over 20 years. And just a bit of an interesting thing, you might have seen her at different places in Hawaii singing for a band, for many different bands. She sings everywhere, funerals, anything. And she sings in Portuguese and Spanish and English. So she also runs the HPR, what is it, Hawaii Public Radio. I think it's Saturday nights or Sunday nights, I'm not sure. But the Brazilian, I don't know, Brazilian music, and I'll let her explain that. But she's amazing. And our second speaker today is Mark Hugh. And hi, Mark. And he's been working at Roosevelt High School for over 20 years, and that's how they know each other. He is called a transition coordinator. So he works with students, including students of special ed, to guide them into the career of their choice. And so he prepares students to be college ready or career ready or just world ready. And he really loves making a difference in students' lives. And he's great. So we're really happy to have him today. He knows a lot about this because he's been doing it for years. And he loves the water. So if you ever see him out on the beach, he's probably boogie boarding out there somewhere. So we want to welcome both of them and with a big round of applause. And we're going to give it over to Mark. Thank you, Mark.
Oh, thank you very much. Here we go. So let's see how we start here. Let me share with you what I have, and we'll start from there. And Sandy, if you want to leave your camera on, I noticed with over 50 people in a room, this is the quietest room I've ever been in with 50 people. So to see another smiling face besides Sue, kind of get me going here. So here we go. I'm going to start with the PowerPoint. And as Sue said at the end, we'll have a link so that you can also have it. It's not an official document from DOE, it's more from me. So it is what it is. And here we go. I think I'm disabled screen sharing for today. Our practice went pretty good.
Try it one more time. I apologize.
There you go. Okay, that should have worked. Thumbs up if you have this. Okay, great. Here we go. So welcome today to our special education meeting and taking the mystery out of our DOE meetings. So I've been doing this for quite some time. I was actually started as Sandy's educational assistant in the classroom. So I would sit in her classroom and sit there and I think, wow, I'd like to try teaching one day. And 20 something years later, here I am. So thank you very much for having me here today, or us here today. We want to make this mystery go away. We want you guys to know that it may not be as hard as it seems. And I see the polls where some of you have participated already, but just take the mystery out of it. So what I'm going to explain usually is the process of where IEP stands in this whole process of special education. It starts from a reevaluation and it becomes an eligibility, and then you end up with an IEP, and that's the meetings most of you go. We'll do the back end and explain the IEP itself. So here we go.
Can you show your screen, your own face? Is that okay? Because right now we don't see you.
I am on actually. Yeah.
Or the video. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry.
But you guys are looking at the PowerPoint, right?
Yep.
So let's go with this. Okay. Here we go. So the second one is, well, here's this village. So I've heard this saying for quite some time. I guess it started in Africa maybe, but it does take a village to actually help a student to learn and understand the world, actually, academic behavior, the whole thing. So this village actually meets during our meetings, and you as an interpreter are a very important part of this village, because without you, this team, I usually call them the IEP team, cannot function without all that communication necessary for all the parties to understand what's going on. Okay, so here we go. How do you qualify for special education? Special education is a service, I would say, and it is something that you qualify for, and usually starts with a referral. So this could be from anywhere from grades, elementary school, I guess, middle school to high school. And a referral actually is a process where someone will recognize a student having difficulty, usually in academics, and maybe there's a reason behind it. Some of our disabilities are physical and you can see the disability. Some are more invisible, like an emotional or transparent, I guess, as we say now. So an emotional disability you might not see, but inside things are churning and things are happening. And what happens is, whatever the disability, it affects their ability to perform at their best in an academic setting. And in a school, a general ed setting is the so-called normal academic setting. It's a larger class. In high school, it could be 30 students, and special education will help that student maybe improve on their academics by, if they qualify, giving them certain accommodations. Sometimes we have a big one is a smaller class. So instead of 30 people, you'd have only 12 people or 15 in a class, where the education can be more 1-to-1 or 2-to-1, or a smaller ratio of student to teacher. Okay. So once you have that referral process and you start it going, we start with what would be called a reevaluation meeting. Notice these red, bright red signs. It all makes sense at the end. So if you don't remember anything, just remember reevaluation. So there's going to be a concern that I talked about a little. We talked about an academic concern. Sometimes there's behavior concerns. A lot of times, even before we can start teaching, if the student does not have behaviors under control, they're not ready to learn. So there are all kinds of concerns, physical concerns, fine or gross motor. Is that blocking their ability to learn in a general ed setting? If it doesn't, maybe they don't even need the special ed services. So each person is different. That's why that individual educational program, the IEP, is specific for them. Here are 14 different disabilities to qualify for special ed services. We're not testing you on any of these, but if you look at them, you can see the wide range of disabilities that qualify you for special education. And I think even the harder part is students can have more than one of these disabilities or multiple disabilities. So it does make it a little harder to function in a general ed setting, and that's where special education may come in. The smaller classes and specialized instructions to help. Okay. Right now, we're going to take a break. I like to talk a lot. Sandy likes to talk a lot. So I also made these breaks in here. So Sandy, any comments on the beginning? I'm going to chime in with her every so often so we can get an outlook from the interpreter side.
Just one comment, clarification, where you mentioned reevaluation in the beginning, shouldn't it be initial evaluation?
Yes, so there's two types of evaluations. If we're talking about the beginning, the first teacher to recognize this disability, it will be an initial. And as we're going to learn later in the slides, every 3 years they have a reevaluation. So it's necessary every 3 years to have a reevaluation, and every year there's an IEP. So the first reevaluation is called initial, yes. And thereafter, I think we just call them reevaluations once they have already been in special education. Good question. Anyone else?
By the way, Mark, could you re-share your screen? The screen, I think, went off just one more time while people are asking. Thank you.
Wait, hold on. Let me just reshare and see what happens.
Thank you. And you may want to, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so I think when we come big and I see the whole group, I lost the connection. Okay. Any other chat questions or comments?
Yeah, Mark, can you see the chat?
I cannot see it actually.
Okay, there's
I can see it, but I gotta go to it.
okay,
Okay.
I can read it to you. There's a comment from Erica saying, hi, regarding the referral process, parents and teachers may initiate the process.
Correct.
Yeah. That's true. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I do see it. I just gotta click it
it's
off.
anybody who notices that there's something about this student that may require attention.
Correct. Okay, let's from the reevaluation, let's see what's next. So here's the evaluation status. During that evaluation, we're thinking, will we need one? Does this student actually qualify, or is the referral legitimate, and should we pursue it more? We may already know, but we may need assessments to help us make this decision. So the team will meet at these reevaluations and decide which assessments are needed to define the need of the student. So you could have their current performance, how they're doing now in classes. You could have new and old assessments. So if they haven't had an initial, some parents actually have some assessments from previously. You can share that with the team. They just have to review it first, the DOE does, and you can share it at the meetings. You can use their classwork, what's happening in class. If their grades are bad and they just don't get the concept, it will actually show in their classwork. Whoever gives the referral will also give their information of why they think they may be possible to be eligible. Grades are a good one. Attendance is also one. Students that don't come to school doesn't mean they need special ed, but a lot of times there's other factors that may be from that, and attendance could be one of them. And of course, you have other reports, medical diagnosis. So there's a wealth of information. The IEP team can decide to get new information or even use the old information. Okay. To get these assessments done, Of course, the parent will have to sign a consent form. So after that reevaluation meeting, they'll create a form, and whatever the team decides may be the best assessments, the parent will have to sign off, or the guardian, to administer the assessments. And it can be anywhere, matching the disabilities to seeing the assessments. You can see some are emotional, some are more physical, some are like hearing, speech or language, or vision tests. They're all different types, and there's way more than this actually. So what happens at this next meeting after the reevaluation, we have our assessments. Now we have a meeting. Usually it's a different day. They give you 60 days to finish those reevaluation or those assessments they need. But when the eligibility meeting starts, we have kind of like a criteria workshop on each of the 14 disabilities, and the IEP team sits and decides which disability the student may qualify under. Any questions so far? Or Sandy, any comments?
I have
will go
I have
for
a
it.
question. I have a
Right.
question. This is Sue. Can you go back a few slides? I wanted to ask a question.
Which,
That one right there,
Yeah.
right there. So I'm trying to, because it's really fast. This is really super fast. So I'm going to try to slow it down a little bit. I know that I've been in schools where they are talking about these assessments, and they say, okay, everybody, so what we're going to do, that we have everybody in the room and we're going to talk about these assessments and how's the class work. Then the teachers start talking about how they're doing in the class. And that, I think, is because they're trying to talk about the performance in the class. Then we say, okay, but there's a doctor's referral here. Do you have any doctor's things, or has they been referred to the principal's office? How's their behavior? How's whatever? Okay, well, let's look at their grades. So it looks like all of these might have to do with their classwork. So the teacher talks, the different teachers, whoever they take the class talks. And then they go on to talk about, like, if they have autism or something, and there's a medical diagnosis that has been created. So then they ask the parent, especially like in elementary, I'm just asking you if this is how it goes. They ask the parent, do you have any, we suspect they might have this or something. What has the doctor said? Do you have any reports that you can show us? And so the next slide, if I can see that one, I know that you talked about that sometimes they talk about these assessments. Okay, well, I think in order to determine whether or not they can have special ed, we might need these assessments. We might need to do assessments on them. And then they talk about who is going to do the assessments. And they may say, well, we don't need the functional behavior, but we do need the emotional behavior assessment. And as they're saying these things, the interpreter has to know how to say all of these terms as we're interpreting. And that's what makes it really difficult as interpreters, because I know, Mark, you're coming from a non-interpreter, point of view. So I just wanted to tell everybody, this is where, and by the way, the occupational therapy, I think is spelled therapy, should be spelled wrong. I spelled incorrectly, but I think everyone can see that. But that's fine. But what I mean is that the fine motor skills grows. I mean, you kind of went through it really quickly, but in the meetings, they talk about this and they name these titles of, let's talk about, what about emotional assessment? Does he need an emotional behavior assessment? And if he does, then let's talk about the results of the assessment. So this is where it gets difficult for interpreters, is because we need to know these terminologies. And so I just wanted to let everyone know. That's why many times an IEP or a meeting will have so many people in the room, not just, sometimes it's just a bunch of different teachers that they're having, but sometimes it's to talk about all of these things, right? And to determine whether or not they need it. And after they do need it, then they come back and discuss the result of the assessment. And so knowing this and going back later to see this PowerPoint, which will be given to everybody, is really a good way to prepare for this type of meeting. So I just wanted to explain that it can be very confusing, but once we see that, oh, this is what needs to be signed, the consent forms of any type of assessment that they need, the parent has to say, yes, go ahead and send somebody to the class or take the student out of the class and do the assessment. It's okay. And so sometimes I think the speech and the language assessment, they will call in an interpreter to be there, especially elementary school. They want to know if it's a cognitive learning problem or if it's a language issue. So many times when they're asking questions or they're having them talk, they actually have an interpreter there. Yeah. So I just wanted
Yeah.
to slow it down a bit, repeat a little bit, and let everyone know that this can be quite confusing. And
Oh,
I think
exactly.
Louisa said that's the point, Sue, knowing these terms in both languages. Thank you for bringing it up. So yeah, we have to know them both.
Can I jump
Thank
in
you
here?
very much. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so for backing way up for us interpreters, as soon as we get these assignments, and you see that it's a school, sometimes the work order just says school meeting. And so if you can, if there's the requester's name and phone number is listed there, I suggest you contact them and say, and ask what type of meeting it is. And if there are any types of documents or drafts that could be furnished for us. Let's see. Oh, you want me to? Okay, here I am. See me now. Yeah, what type of meeting is this? And so what can I do to prepare myself so that I can look up what a functional behavior assessment is in my target language, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it helps to know what type of meeting we're in for. And before, yeah, also ask if the copy of the rights and responsibilities pamphlet is available in that target language. Because many times the schools will already take it upon themselves. Oh yeah, we have a Spanish pamphlet. And so they bring it up. And so DOE has a lot of these. The copy of rights and responsibilities that is given, it's offered at every meeting, every type of meeting, to let the parents know what this is. And so it really helps if it's in that language already, because the administrator at the meeting, it's usually the principal, vice principal, or sometimes the department chair, reads the whole thing out. And that can take up time. So if we can cut to the chase, have it in the language already, that would, really help before the meeting, when meeting starts. Okay.
Okay, and we could talk about at the very end how we can get more information as well from the teachers. I just wanted to read a comment. It said one person tries to write acronyms next to these words, like functional behavior assessment. I don't know if you guys say FBA, but I know occupational therapy sometimes is OT and things like that. So that was a comment from Erica. Thank you.
A good one. Actually, between the two of you, I heard quite a bit. So I'm glad you said I talk. This is going fast, because this is a demonstration of what it's like in an IEP meeting when I actually speak fast, or things are going quicker and the interpreter needs to understand. So slowing down is a good thing for on the teacher side, definitely. And I'm very guilty of that. So thanks for the reminder. This part is probably the worst that I'm presenting, because it is a whole course in itself. So what we have is this worksheet that we use. I think if the interpreters could see the worksheet beforehand, they can also know what type of meeting it might be. Or even when we talk about this worksheet, they'll know the different criteria we use for each one. And a lot of us go through that criteria at the meetings. So if they have a sheet beforehand and can kind of glance, if they know sort of what type of meeting it'll be, like Sandy says, they can start reading on the reval part or the eligibility, what forms we'll use, and maybe educate them on that. Same like that, the parents all get a procedural safeguards. It's their rights, actually. And even if you guys can have a copy of it, so the interpreter can see it in English first and kind of glance over the table of contents and what the subjects matter, I think it'll help too. And yes, we do have the PSN, or what we call the procedural safeguards, in many different languages. So that, I think it's even online. So that, I think you guys can even see it ahead of time. But I'm not sure if it's only DOE people can see it. But that's kind of what we're saying. So great questions. I think we are moving on. we are going to sum up these with what Sandy says. And at the end of this meeting, we're going to have more what the teacher should do more and what maybe the interpreters can do more. So we're going to continue with the process here. So here we go. Okay, so here comes the IEP. So we did the reevaluation with the concerns of the students. We did the eligibility with the criteria of the disabilities. And here's the IEP, it's the third one. The individualized education program is developed. And within this, I'm going to show you a sample of what it looks like. It's blank, but you see the formatting. I know all of you have worked at a meetings are going to notice this format, but there won't be any words on it. But what they do talk about is a student's present levels of educational program performance. And the transition services is actually my section, like Sue mentioned, what a student wants to do, whether it's continue schooling, get a job. Some like to take a break. Some like to go to the military. So I talk to them and interview them, especially when they're older, 16 years old and older. We start filling out those sections. So if they're younger or 14 or below, those might look blank or have just 1 or 2 words in them. Okay. This is what drives the IEP is these are standards. If it's a diploma, we'll get into that a little more, but they have goals and objectives for the student. So those are written as one of the sections. The services provided, what type of special ed services, what kind of accommodations they may need. An extended school year, that actually explains, does a student have to come to school every day because they're going to forget and not learn, and then they have to start all over each day. There's assessments and a least restrictive environment. So at this point, here's the IEP process I just said. The reevaluation we talked about, the eligibility, the IEP itself. There's a whole nother category called 504. I call them like mini special educations. They get some of the services, not all. They may not get the smaller classroom, but they may have the extended time in reading. So these are the plans that we have. Today, we're only focusing on reevaluation, eligibility, IEP. And within the IEP, you're going to see there's I usually call it program and placement. One is where are they going to get the education and what is the program going to look like? So within the IEP, that's what they're getting at. And starting in the 9th grade, so when you finish middle school and you come to high school, our meetings include a path of study. This path of study is either a diploma, which we're going to talk about a little more, or a certificate of completion. There are 2 different courses of study with 2 different goals, but both of them can get you out of high school, one maybe with a job and one with an education to go further. So let's see what I had on the next one. Oh, here we go. So reevaluation is done every 3 years, as I mentioned, and each year they need an IEP. So I'm going to stop sharing and reshare a blank IEP. I'm doing. This one. It's going to bring the blank IEP up. Any questions or comments as I do this? And back to sharing. That should have worked. It might be a little big, but here we go. So this is an IEP. If you notice the numbers, I think there's like 23 different questions. So that kind of guides you through too. A lot of it is the beginning is just, the facts about the student. Some teachers like to read this. I think on my first meetings, if I've never met a parent before, I will read the considerations when developing an IEP. It's on the front page. And if you can see the factors that they consider, they go over those. Like Sandy mentioned, is this an initial reevaluation or did we already have an evaluation? And they talk about different assessments and how we come about developing it, special factors. Let me use, sorry. There we go. Behaviors. We talked about English proficiency a lot. Is there blind or vision impairment? Are there communication needs? And these are matching some of the disabilities we read about, hard of hearing.
Are these mainly in elementary school, Mark? Or is
beg your
it
pardon?
like when they first start? Is this mainly used in like when they first start, like out in elementary school? Or is it
This is
used throughout every
I
year?
think for all ages, this is the format,
Every year.
right? So I I take for granted everyone reads this, but I think when I meet parents for the first time, our first meeting, I want to make sure they know what's going on. And some of these parents have been hearing this from elementary and have gone over this quite a few times. Yeah. Some have not. So some, even in high school, you can be deemed special ed, and they may have never seen this before, even in high school. Yeah. And again, the bottom, when reviewing IEP, the additional factors they consider, the progress toward those goals and objectives we talked about, the results of those reevaluations, information from the parents, the students, the teachers, and other matters. Okay, that's page 1. So then you get to what we call that present levels of educational performance. That's number 10. Usually you'll see a reading score in there. They like to track reading comprehension. Okay, wait, there's going to be a lot of blank spaces. And next session, I think, is mine. So they have a transition section. This is an older IEP, so they have developed this quite a bit. But we do talk about what they want to do in high school, and there's 3 areas that I concentrate on. We also match their interests. A lot of students, even adults, like to get jobs or work their careers in something they're interested in. And again, we don't start really till after 14 years old. Usually I start at 16, actually. And within this categories, we talk about their education, what their educational goals will be, and the services the DOE provides would be the middle column. In my section, I talk about employment, what their career goals will be, again, in the columns of the goal and what the teachers and DOE will do to help the student achieve those goals, and even independent living skills. Of course, there are home skills, but we're a school. But a lot of independent schools skills can be demonstrated in school. Can they independently, use initiatives to start work, either academic work or even vocational work. And I talk to the parents about how they have daily living skills at home too. Imagine not only academic, can they also take care of themselves? And speaking of that, one of number 15 is a transfer of rights. So part of my job is to remind the students and the parents that when they become 18, they become their own adult. And I usually suggest they can consider guardianship, power of attorney, or even an educational representative for medical purposes from a doctor can give you a note to be a power of attorney on a student. Okay, and then the next section is, this is blank, but you'll see the standards we talked about would go in number 16. The goal that they're talking about, so it might be a standard of math. The goal might be to increase their math skills from algebra 2 to algebra 3 or things of that nature. How we measure the goal. So a lot of times in here, you might see classwork, student-made tests. I'm sorry, student-made tests, that would be pretty good. Teacher-made tests. And even our assessments that we use can be measured. And each one, 19 in the golden objective section, would be the specific objective the student might have for math. So for algebra, it might be to learn how to solve for a function. How does a variable play in those functions and in the math of algebra? Yeah. So those would be more specific as we go down the line, from the standard to the goal to how we measure it to the specific objective for the student. Okay. So this part gets sort of long. I think we've said that in our meetings here, because the standard is very long. And usually one good reason to give your IEP early is we don't read every word in that IEP, and the parent can. So the meeting is a lot more efficient if they look over it and we kind of just go to the objectives. And some teachers will match their present levels of performance. We saw that first page. They'll put a need in there. I don't know if I did this, but here goes. They'll place a need in here, and some of us will number it even, like math 1. And the need will be able to learn the algebra, the variable solving. So some of the more efficient teachers match that, because the need in the PLEP, we call it, that page I just showed you, needs to have some kind of corresponding goal. So if they match it M1 math, the teacher will write not only the standard, but in the objective, they'll write M1 math. And you can see how the need is shown, M1, and the goal is also matched. And that teacher actually goes a little faster through their IEP because all they did is see the need, understand the goal, and they can move on a little quicker or at least review it. And if they have questions, they don't have to read all 8 or 4 or 3 objectives. They can just ask the parent if they read it and move on. So that's why giving the IEP to the parent and the interpreter is important. So you can sort of study what the meeting will be like and be ready for what's going to happen next. Okay. Almost done with this part. So I said there's about 23 questions. So one of them was the extended school year we talked about. Does that student qualify for an extended school year? Do they regress in their learning? Can they retain what they learn? Is the disabilities a factor in here? Do they have to come back after one day because they forget in 24 hours, they'll forget what they learned? Can they go maybe a fall break, 7 days, and still retain what they learned? All of us lose a little. For example, summer's a long break. That one has a lot of people that might qualify extended school year because it's almost 2 months. And if they can and they don't forget, then they don't qualify for extended school year. If they do start forgetting, then the team will have to decide how long that break will be before they restart school. I have people on extended school year from like 3 days and they start coming back, 5 days coming back to school. And others that come after 19 days, they can go without service and need to start ESY after 19 days. So there's all types. Yep. Let me put this down, almost done. This box looks the smallest right now. It's called services and supplementary aids and services. This would be if they get special ed minutes, we'll put it in here. There will be a line in this grid when it will start, when it will end, and how often. For example, at Roosevelt's, our classes are 195 minutes a week. So if he has one special ed class, that is smaller size, then he will have it for 195 minutes per week. Let's say it's social studies. Math is a good one. Everybody has trouble with math. He might have a smaller class in math, a resource class, they call that. So we'll put special ed minutes, 195 minutes per week, and that will be on our schedule, like his second period. He goes 3 times a week. It'll equal 195 minutes, okay? That will look a lot longer. The supplementary aids, usually you'll see at least 3 or 4 in there. That may include something like extended time on tests. Slow readers might need 50% time. Maybe they have a really hard time pronouncing words and 100% time extra to help them on their reading or even their test taking. Since it's reading, they may give you 100% more. So if a test is 1 hour, they may give you 2 hours. Assignments, if its assignment is due in 3 days, they may give you 6 days. So it's all documented here. It looks very small here, but this part can be very long. And the clarification is just whatever we put on the top in 21 in the 2 boxes will explain what it is on the bottom in the clarifications, even why they might need it or how it's going to be presented to them. Okay, we're almost done with the IEP. There's 2 more questions. The last one, they call it state assessment. So usually at 8th grade, 11th grade, I know they all take a state assessment. So we would put the student will participate in a statewide assessment. If the student needs accommodations, we'll have to put number 3. He'll participate in the statewide assessments with accommodations. For example, the extended time was a good example. If he needs 50% on all his tests, including the state assessment, then we have to apply for extra time with this indication. Some students can even take the test. They have to do an alternative test, and that's number 4. Their communication systems may not be made for the test, and they may have to use other means of getting the results and assessing them on their abilities. They also have end-of-year courses that they all take tests. So it's not only 11th and 8th grade nowadays. It could be any age. Those are also included at statewide assessments. They're called end of and the last one is called the least restrictive environment. It's the extent, if any, the student will not participate here we go, will not participate with students without disabilities in the general ed class, extracurricular activities, or other non-academic activities. This one confuses everyone. They created a double negative. So usually if a student will be with his general ed peers, they'll call them without disabilities. So if you're in a resource class, you're not going to be without the non-disability students. It gets very confusing, but it is a double negative. And some teachers who are just actually explaining this box, who'll be in a resource class. It's easier to read, it's easier to define, things like that. Okay.
Just a
That was a
question
lot
about
for the, yep, I'm
statewide
gonna,
assessment. Okay.
yeah, go ahead. In the chat
Just
or,
before you go on, I just had a real quick question. A
sure.
statewide assessment, I mean, you're talking about it, but half of us aren't teachers and we don't know what this is. So is this an end of the year? Maybe you said it and I missed it. Is this an end of the year, like a test for every single student they all have to take this to see
The
where they
normal
are?
The normal statewide are administered during 8th grade and 11th grade. I don't know the younger ages actually, but that is the one. If you're going to be an 8th grader, then we must mark off they'll take the tests. And if they need the assessments, we must indicate that also. I know 8th and 11th are the testing years that I guess the state buys an assessment and they administer it to everybody, all the students in public schools on 8th and 11th. The end of course test is up to the student. If I take biology, I know biology has one, but I'm in the 9th grade or the 11th grade. At the end of that course, I'll get a test, and they call that a statewide. Everybody in biology takes those, and they kind of measure that statewide. So nowadays, I think we've all been checking off the boxes in high school because they also have these end of courses. Some have the HITA test, actually, is another one for English language learners. They have their tests. I don't actually know their dates, but there are many tests that the students take, and the 8th grade and 11th are the main statewide assessments that we need to indicate that they'll take it or not. Okay, I was gonna see where we are on the agenda, so hold on a second. Let me get
And
back.
we still have an hour, so that's okay, or at least half an hour for questions and things.
It's
And yes, we will be putting this doc up on a drive so all of you can have access.
right, sure is.
Yeah, somebody's asking if we could get that form, because I can't find it online, the
I made that
IEP
form. That form really doesn't exist blank.
Oh,
I don't mind sharing with you because there's no names on it. There's nothing on it actually, and it's actually an older version. And but like I said, I think only the transition section has changed. A lot of it looks the same. I will give you a copy of the form.
thank you.
I'm gonna write it down. Okay. Oh, actually, this is where we are. Okay. When we talked about that program of study, we began with. Is everybody okay? Actually, I don't have a break thing in here, but any questions, or I know it's time to process or see what's happening. Let's take a break and see what you guys have out there. Did the share come out actually? Are you guys seeing it?
No, we don't see the share right now.
Okay, you know why I didn't share it yet. Small detail. Okay, I'm ready to do actually the next one, but if I'll leave it here for a second. I'm gonna check the chat too and see if there's anything that's
Yeah, I'm checking. I don't see anything.
okay.
Yeah.
Let's keep going.
It's
So after
except
the,
I like just
yeah.
real quick, I like what Erica wrote. She said goals and objectives for the students are usually based on the state standards. And that's why probably if they do take an assessment or whatever, they're seeing how they are rated with the rest of the students. And that's what can get confusing. And I think you're going to talk about that a little bit. But I think that's what she wrote. She said, yeah, goals may include specific math, science, and
Actually, I'm gonna
language,
have a
which a
sample
lot
of
of
these
us don't
goals
know.
coming up.
Yeah.
We're gonna have an example.
Okay. Very
So
good.
good thing you said, good comment about the goals. So when you are going to an IEP, one of the things is the path of study we talked about. So they have to decide where this will be done and what type of student. And it goes with me too, as my transition. Are they going to college? Are they in taking academic courses? Are they taking the necessary classes to get to college? But there is another path of study certificate of completion. So let's start with the diploma one. Everybody knows the diploma, right? You move your TASA and you get your diploma. Well, 24 credits is needed with specific course requirements to earn your diploma in the state of Hawaii. In our IEP, we talked about the accommodation modifications, the extended times and things of that nature. They can have that in their classes. I think a big one we talked about was a resource room being a smaller class. If they do qualify for special ed services, they may be, like we said, resource math, since math is a little harder. It also ties in with the secondary plan. So if they want to take their science courses 4 year, they only have to take 3. But if you're going to college, I usually recommend you take a 4th year math, things of that nature. This is a big one. That's why I guess I put it in red. If you're going the diploma route, all special ed services will end once you receive your high school diploma. So usually that's about 18 years old. They're no longer be under special education. If they go to college, they're under ADA, and they can always apply for services in college. And that's a diploma route, is the 24 credits based on standards to get a diploma. But there is another side to getting a diploma or getting a diploma case, I guess. It's called the, oh, here's a diploma sample. Actually, I did it this way. So we did the math one, yeah. I just picked a standard. They're usually, like something like this, but I tried to get an easy one. Using a geometric shape, their measures and their properties of this to describe objects. Example, modeling a tree trunk or human torso as a cylinder. So I just made some objectives from it. The student used a geometric shape and their properties to describe and compare it to a body part with 90% accuracy for 3 consecutive data collection days. We measure the objective. That's why those numbers are to quantify or quantitative, whether they met their objective. This is more standards-based type of goal. It's just a simple one, but you can see it does relate to the standard. Okay. Here's the second part of this. It's called the certificate of completion. A certificate of completion, it focuses on their IEP goals, their objectives, their transition plan. And basically, if you're in a certificate, you're not earning credits, but you're studying 5 different domains. These domains include functional academics, and that is the math, reading, and writing. So your math won't be the algebra or the geometry example I showed you. Your math might be more of, I'll show you an example. If you worked overtime, a time and a half, how much are you getting paid per hour? If you work for 20 days and you got 40 hours and you make $10 an hour, what do you take home? Oh, but your tax is 30%. How much is it from there? I think you get the idea. The reading would be like manuals, and the math would be, calculations, measurements on the job, things of that nature. Daily living skills is one of the domain. Can you take care of yourself? Can you cook? Can you clean? In our classes for the daily living skills, people, they have washing machines, dryers. We have bins in some rooms where they can cook, they can clean up, and things of that nature. Vocational training is a big one for us. If your certificate of completion, that's your course of study. We have many training programs on campus within our community. Some work at hotels in Waikiki. We try to match them with a lot of their interests. And next one is called community experiences. So these students actually get on the bus. They practice catching the bus because you have to get to work. You have to go to the store to shop. They go as a group. Within the store, they have to find their milk, their bread, whatever they need. So we ask the parents to give them a list. They go shopping. They find this. They come back to class. They practice those functional math academic skills. They'll count their change. Usually they count the change in the store would be the better thing. And then they can take it home and show mom, hey, I went shopping with the list and this is what I got. And lastly, I think this is the fun one for them, the rec leisure activities. All of us, I think, have a job and work, and I think most of us work so we can have free time, so we can do the things we want to do. So the students also get their free time, things they want to do. They earn money sometimes. Some of them wash cars at Roosevelt. That class will take them to movies. They might get their popcorn and hot dog and watch a movie. They've gone to Dave and Buster's to get a few dollars they earn to play any games, to probably have a lunch there. And they've also gone to the parks and things of that nature. So those 5 domains pretty cover everything about life, actually. And that's basically what a certificate of completion is. The big difference for them, though, is all special education services for the certificate of completion will end on the day before their 22nd birthday. So, for example, they can stay, if they need more training vocationally, they can stay up to 21 and the last day before they're 22. When they're 22, all services end and they don't come on campus. Their last day on campus would be the day before their birthday. Now, if you're 18, what we say when we say graduation for these students, they will participate in a graduation ceremony. and they'll walk with everybody. The back, you pick up your certificate or diploma and you put it in your case. So they're just like every other student. The only difference is, remember, the diploma student who got his diploma, all his services end, or her services end. The certificate student can actually sign up to come back to more school and train to get better at a job. So one day they could be full-time employed and they don't have to come to school anymore. So if that happens between 18 and 22, they can leave at any time they want to. If they are the goal would be to be employed, because if you work 40 hours a day and you have to come school all day, you got to give one of them up. And if you're over 18, you participate in your graduation, whether you're 19, 20, 21, if you can get a job and hold on to it, you could actually leave high school. You don't have to stay to your 22nd birthday. Okay. There's a little sample of the goals here. So their standard is a little different. I took it from, I think we call it health. So it's more of a decision-making goal. They'll make, using decisions, they'll make, and making a goal and setting skills to enhance the health. I'm gonna fix that a little. But the object would be, they'll calculate the percentage sale from a sale of 30% off compared to buy one, get one free, and determine which item is most economical to purchase. And they'll do this 3 times, and hopefully they're right each time. Yep. Oh, we'll stop here for a second. Sandy, any comments, any interjections of what you have?
While Sandy is getting her video to show, I just wanted to point out a few slides before. Maybe you can go back to that geometry question.
That example, I think.
Yeah, because a lot of this is being explained to the mothers or the fathers, the parents of the children. So sometimes they'll say, well, in mathematics, he's in grade 10 and they're supposed to be learning geometric shapes and their measures and their properties to describe objects, such as modeling a tree trunk or a human torso. And we are sitting there simultaneously interpreting this. Or sometimes if we're sitting across from the table, we have to consecutively interpret it. But this is where it gets challenging for a lot of interpreters, is these examples. And this is not on a form that you may give us, a blank form, but this is actually on a teacher's thing that they're probably reading out loud. And so this is where it gets really tough to try to explain this to students. So I just wanted to point that out, that this is the challenge of interpreting in schools. Some say it's really easy. It's easier than normal, but to me, it is not easier because I never learned how to say cylinder in Chinese. It's my second language, but this is why it gets challenging. Sandy, maybe you had something to add.
This is one of the places where certain portions of the IEP, they're very wordy and filled with lingo, and exactly the points where, Sue, you mentioned the challenges. So at that point, I ask the teachers, whoever it is who's reading that goal, an objective, and the standard, if they can make it concise. Still getting the point across and being correct, and not just the minute details, and it's just word, blah, 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 and then we get all tearing our hair out and we're lost. So those are the certain times that I ask them to here I have, for particularly wording segments, e.g. assessment results, goals and objectives, request simplification or summarization, as many are repetitious in wording, like this objective part where it says 90% accuracy for 3 consecutive data collection days. That's probably going to be the same frequency for every single goal and objective for that student in that section. So, cut to the chase. The person who's explaining that can just say, we're going to use this frequency for all of these objectives in this category. So I'm not going to repeat that. So yeah,
Yeah.
ask the teacher to
To-
cook it down,
Yeah.
reduce.
If as a teacher, trust me, I don't think we want to read all those standards either.
Yeah.
Sometimes I list quite a few, and we know they're there. We know what they mean, and I think all of us want to kind of go over it as fast as possible. I think the objective is more important, like Sandy said, and I also believe she's right that the 90% accuracy. I have a lot of teachers that say we're using the same measurement, so we just talk about the gist of the objective. Yeah, if they have more. I think the standard is not the one in question. It's more the objectives, is how it's written and what we're measuring. I think is important. Yeah.
Mhm.
Good
And
one,
then
you guys.
also going back to the PLEP, the present levels of educational performance. Usually the first part of it will be the student's strengths, what they're good at. And then the second section will be their needs, areas of need. So all of these goals and objectives will be based on those needs. Okay, he doesn't know how to subtract numbers under 20, doesn't know how to write a complete sentence, doesn't know how to use punctuation, things like that. So all of those goals and objectives will be based on those needs. So you can just cross-check them. They'll be exactly which ones they are listed in that PLEP. You're going to see them right there first. Then right here with this screen that's up here now, that's what you're going to work on for the next year.
Thank you. Can we have Mary? Mary, you had a question? Your hand is raised.
Yes. Thank you. Erica had in the chat a point about glossary including acronyms and those used frequently. And Mark had used a terminology that is contextually difficult for languages that do not have direct translation. For instance, the word Mark used was domain. So that would take probably at least 5 minutes in order for me as an interpreter to ask, in what context is the word domain used? And in my mind, the way Mark had explained it is that it's a segment of math. Did I get that correctly, Mark? Well, what was the context in which domain was used? Because if I just translated what I think domain is, it would be like in this, contextually. So what I understand, I know what I know domain to be is not the context of domain that you had used. And so to Erica's point, having what your definition and terminology is very important. And sometimes when things go real fast and everybody is in a hurry and wants to get done with the meeting, we don't all have time to sit and ask for the definition of these. I was going somewhere with that point, but you take my point, right? Thank you.
Yeah, it's just, I think I'm showing the difference. The diploma is all those words are written, so you academically earn your diploma through that route is studying the standards. The certificate of completion, they don't use a standard to base their ability on. They use the domains or the different areas, I guess would be the definition of domain. The areas of study would be the 5 that we talked about. Okay. And that's the certificate of completion. So they're not standards based, they're more domain, or I have to say goal and objective, but they're all related to those domains. So a student that is studying to go to college and doing the standards are following the standards for algebra. The certificate of completion is working in 5 areas, and one of the area, within that, and there's some academics, but it's a totally different definition of functional academics versus the standard academic. And that's just one of
So-
them, yeah.
That, and so the use of the word domain here then would, it would be,
Areas.
Yeah.
Areas.
Area of study.
Important and to get the context of how you all in DOE define domain, so that those of us who have languages that don't have a direct translation of the word domain itself, and we would have to define the context of
I think-
in which you all use domain, right?
Right. If you
Because
were-
even functional academics is
Yeah.
already something, terms that don't have translations either. Vocational training don't have direct. We all have to define each and every one of these
Okay.
Mark,
domains
let me
individually,
answer this.
contextually, instead of just the word that are on there. So that's
Yeah.
why it's
Yeah.
important for us interpreters to follow what Erica had done, as we were all trained to do, to have these in our glossary, so that
Yeah.
we to anticipate the need to translate this when it comes up.
Maybe I can answer that, Mary, and thank you for your comment. And so if I may, we're at the end, we're going to talk about a few strategies. We're going to have people who give up their be able to say some strategies that they use. I think also not just, I mean, we have a glossary of IEP meetings that we're putting up on the Google Drive that I'm going to give you access to. It may not even have the term domain. I mean, it may be something, some of the terms specific teachers just use in their vocabulary that I never use in my everyday vocabulary. But again, as interpreters, it's our goal to try to understand in the context of things what they're talking about and just use a term that's similar. You know, if I say areas, 5 areas, if I don't use areas, I'll say 5 things. I mean, there's ways that we can get general without knowing exactly what it means. And so at the time we don't understand, maybe later throughout the conversation we get it, then we can always add a better word later on as we're interpreting. But I think this is the challenge of interpreting. And I think this is an interpreter's challenge of how do we deal with words that we just don't have in our vocabulary or that we just don't understand. And, you know, during our training, we learned that when you don't understand it, there are ways that we deal with things. And that's, again, an interpreter training thing. And maybe we can even have another webinar on that. But we do have a glossary that we're putting up. I even found a glossary in French that we put up for IEP meetings for English French, and there's English Spanish and other things that we will be adding to the thing. So thank you very much for your comments. Thank you, Mark.
Mary,
Thank you.
I don't know if it helps, but if you flip it, and instead of being the interpreter, you were the teacher, and you look at the domains, you're teaching those life skills versus the standard of algebra. So as a teacher, your book or whatever you're following, algebra book, the domains is what you want the students to learn are these things. And the other one is it's just a whole different world of the academic standard for one class, and you're in the algebra class. And this is weird. I'm in high school now. So you go to algebra in one class, and they all in there doing algebra. In elementary, I think everybody's the same room, and you guys all work on general math, sort of. So as a teacher in high school, you're not concentrating on algebra or standards. That's what I have to teach all the kids. I have to get every standard. As a teacher for certificate of completion, this is your book. It's like these are the skills. The 5 chapters I need to do would be this. Yeah. So yeah, I think the more meetings you go and you see the different meanings of diploma versus certificate of completion, they're a whole different type of aura of the meeting or vibe in the meeting, as we say. And you kind of get it, the life skills things. And whenever we talk about one in high school, they all come in hand, all 5 of them. So that's just their course of study. Well, good one, you guys. Great.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. So here, I think, is what we've been waiting for. And Sandy surprised me this morning with a few extra. So this is 2 pages, but there are notes. So it's just things to look up and address, yeah. Oops, sorry, gonna hit the button. Sorry, yeah. Here. So expectations of the interpreter and the teacher. So I wrote a draft of the first page. There's another one with Sandy's on them too, yeah. But for the teacher, and I can speak from this side, we need to give a draft before the meeting. And it's not only good for the interpreter, it's good for the parent. Because when we talk about the goals and objectives, if they actually read it, some parents will say, I don't need to go over it. We read it. We can move on. And yes, other meetings will tear apart each objective sentence by sentence. Not the standards so much. Usually it's the goals we tear apart. The standards are just there quite a bit. But the explanation and the students' work goes off the objectives. Speak slow and clear. For me, that's kind of hard. I like to go, the meetings we like to not stay there long. So I've had very long meetings. I've been known to talk very long, but I like to be concise and clear and make sure they know. But on interpreter side, it could be too much. Yeah. Pause to let them interpret. One day I forgot to stop and I kept rambling on and nobody told me stop. And about 2 paragraphs later, I said, oh my God, I'm interpreting. And that's, you can talk to us and I have to know that to stop. And I've been with different interpreters. So sometimes I do paragraphs, sometimes I do sentences, and then we go. And then we'll see on your side how it goes too for interpreters. And the last one would be the key is for the teacher, and you see it for interpreter too, is communicate effectively with all the parties. You're in there for the village, you keep them together, you're talking both sides. And if you tell us what we need and we tell you what we need, then and even the parents, if they speak up, then it helps everybody. Sandy will probably take the second page, but for me, the interpreter, you guys are saying too about that 100% accuracy I heard as a goal, yeah? And I was going to add in there unbiased and accurate is what it would be all the time. And let us know what the person is saying back. Sometimes when an interpreter is talking to the parent, they seem to talk really long and then they say, we're done. And I go, what did they say actually? It sounded like a lot. And they say, oh, they just like what you said. Or sometimes they go into something longer. And if you're an interpreter, please let me know I'm talking too fast or us know, or too slow or not pausing. And then same would be communicating effectively. So I'm going to let Sandy speak at this point because I did add in hers. For the teacher, you can do both, Sandy.
Okay.
So she also mentioned some of these, so I'll give it to you.
Yeah. So yeah, I did mention some of these. I think the third one, sit next to the client, slightly behind clipboard front. That's pretty much standard. That's what we do in medical. Or if possible,
I'm sorry. You just mumbled this. There's a lot of people who have never been trained. So please explain that one more time.
okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So yeah, ideally we would like to sit right next to the client or slightly behind the client with your clipboard so you can take notes in case, you have to write things down. And then, like Sue said in our meeting yesterday, sometimes you don't always get to sit next to the client. Someone tells you, you sit here. And, you can voice your opinion that it's more efficient if I sit next to the English challenged parent. So,
I'm sorry. I'm just going to reiterate.
ahead.
I think what you're saying. I think what Sandy is saying is when you sit next to the parent or behind the parent, a little bit behind them, or both parents, you can sit in the middle and then pull your chair back.
Yes.
You can interpret simultaneously. You don't need to sit there and be taking notes and trying to do this consecutively. It's just too long. And when they're reading this whole paragraph, it's so much easier to do a simultaneous interpreting, but that means you must sit next or behind them. And I've had many times where the parent says, oh no, sit up here at the table, sit up here, or they're, oh no, you could sit here. I said, no, that's okay. I'll just sit over here. I pull my chair back and move a little bit behind the parent so I can simultaneously interpret. So that's just, I think, what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that a lot of times we do that in medical as well. So let's see. And then before the official start of the meeting, you might take the opportunity when everyone introduces themselves. I don't know if that would be the appropriate time, but just raise your hand and butt in, because they're going to start, and they're going to start like the gun goes off at the horse race, and boom, there they go. So request that participants speak in short phrases and at a reasonable pace to ensure accuracy of interpretation between languages. And if you are using simultaneous technique, ask if everyone is comfortable with hearing two voices at the same time, because some people get thrown off and they have a hard time with that. So, stipulate that. And do not hesitate to raise your hand and repeat the request as needed. Many people get pretty emotional and agitated, especially the parents, when they're talking about their child, and they'll go on and on and on. And so just stop them and say, we need to just use this. Let me interpret this portion that you just said about his behavior at home. So yeah, I know that some people, when they're new at it, they're hesitant to, but no, you're an important person in the meeting. They can't do this meeting without you, or it's going to take a lot longer. So just go ahead, state, your needs as the interpreter in order for you to do a good job. And everybody needs to respect that. I wouldn't hesitate. Mark, could you show the previous
Sure.
screen?
This one.
Yes. Okay, so 100% accuracy. Yeah, that would be our goal and objective. Yeah, let us know what the person is saying back to the teacher. I mean, this goes without saying. If we're all trained interpreters, we're supposed to interpret both sides. Everybody needs to know what everyone else is saying. And I mean, this is how I got to meet Sue in the first place, because the first interpreter for this Chinese speaking father was having a lot of sidebar conversations. The father was going on and on and on, and the interpreter was asking him questions back and forth, back and forth. And my question to the father was, when did you first notice that there was something different about your child? And so like 5 minutes later, the interpreter turns to me and he says, he says this has been going on for quite some time. And that's not what I needed to hear. And then when the physical therapist was giving her report, he was not telling the parent what the PT was saying. So yeah, everybody needs to know what everyone else is saying. And I think that's just basic interpreter ethics, right? And yeah. So that's pretty much it for that screen.
I was reading the chat,
mhm,
and I think they were doing the multiplication for the goal and objective.
mhm.
I was looking, those are just samples I put out of the air.
Yeah,
So
that
it
was
could
for
be
the
well
that's for
written
the
better.
it's for the student to determine which is the best by it.
And we do invite the students, actually. That kicked off the idea. So students are actually invited all the time. Some meetings, just we talk about other things, and we might not have them there for the exact meeting or the whole meeting, but they are invited. I do invite all of us, invite all our students, because this is for them actually, and we want them there, and they should be there actually. So that's the part of students.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to finish up with the last few slides, and then we can kind of continue the discussion. So this actually concludes the presentation part. I'm sorry, there's a lot of typos, but I think hopefully we just laid the groundwork or a little bit more knowledge of what DOE does on their meetings. Don't be afraid to be part of the village, because that thread, you hold everybody together at that meeting. And then your job is very important, and we need the interpreter there. And yes, it's overwhelming, but as you do it and as we get more thorough, I think the meetings become easier for you guys too. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Yeah. So don't be afraid to be the traffic cop, because the effectiveness of the meeting depends on everyone understanding each other. And I was a parent of special ed student before I even got into the field of teaching it. And I was just bowled over and blown away, and everything was this chew over my head. So yeah, even in English, it's a very bewildering domain. So, yeah, so when it's in another language that you don't understand very well, yeah, you need all the help you can get, and that's our job.
Good one.
Well, let's thank everybody. I mean, let's thank Mark and Sandy for the presentation. So first of all, I want to thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It sounds like you
Pleasure.
have spent many years in order to understand it yourself, like Sandy said. And of course, it helps teaching it to going through it. So we're just going to open it up to discussion. And first of all, we wanted to start off with any questions or I also want to let everyone know that if you have suggestions of how you handle things, we also would welcome that because we're all like interpreters. So go ahead and anyone can ask questions, maybe raise your hand. There's a hand thing down there that you can raise, a symbol, or if you can't figure it out, then just go ahead and unmute yourself and you can ask questions. It's open, or make any suggestions. I'll start while you're all thinking. When there is, every teacher's different, and sometimes they have the student services counselor there, sometimes it's the vice principal, sometimes it's the principal, and everyone speaks differently. I think it's hard to tell everyone, hey, I'm an interpreter, I don't understand that, so talk in my terms. It's really difficult. So one strategy that I use is, if someone is giving a lot of acronyms that I don't know, or maybe I do know, I just want them to slow down, especially if they're reading, I will say, I'll be interpreting simultaneously. Oh, excuse me. The interpreter's unfamiliar with that. IDR. What is IDR? And then they say, oh, sorry. And then they say, and then I go back to interpreting. Oh, excuse me. What is the, such and such a meeting? And maybe it's not an acronym. Maybe it's just a term. I'm sorry. What is this determination? Could you explain that? Oh, okay. Thank you. And then at the end, I remember one time one person said, wow, I never knew I used so many acronyms, until the interpreter interrupted it and kept asking, because I couldn't interpret without understanding. Yeah. And then I found that that's number one thing I want to say. Number two, the second thing is that I found that when I'm whispering simultaneously everything, that because I'm whispering, it doesn't bother anybody. The only one it might bother, and I have been asked one time by a mother, oh, could you not do that at the same time? And it's because they were trying to listen in English, because they spoke some English, and so they wanted to listen in English. So then I switched to consecutive. But for the most part, I just keep simultaneous unless the mother is speaking, and then we switch to consecutive. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Anybody else?
Yeah, are there any things that have been particularly challenging for you in this type of meeting, or anything that you found worked for you? And appreciate hearing, especially for things like your Pacific Island languages or the East Asian languages. Like, I work in languages that are Latin derived, so the translation over is quite easy and for a lot of terminology. So I'd like to hear from some of you, see what has worked for you in these type of meetings.
There's a hand raised.
Yes.
Leonardo.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I
do.
was muted. Go ahead, Hong. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that you can ask the requester for information like a draft or anything before the meeting. Because I've been doing this for so many years and so many times, and I never feel that I could ask for that. And it's really a challenge for me when they just say middle school or elementary school. I don't know what grade, so I have to prepare all, for example, like elementary, I have to prepare from kindergarten until fifth grade or something. So that's the greatest challenge to me. So I always had to prepare tons before I can go to a meeting. And then at the meeting, I feel so good because it's just elementary. I mean, it's just kindergarten or first grade or something. So I really had to build my vocabulary for all the grades from, of course, kindergarten, they don't have much, so I don't have to do that much, but I have to build up for up to 12th grade. So yeah, it's very nice. At least I know what grade they are. So at least I just focus from kindergarten, preschool up to that grade rather than I have to go all 12 grades at a time. That's always a difficult part for me. So I feel medical is less challenging in that sense that you have the area narrower. But of course, with medical also, if I know exactly just the name of the doctor, I know what's the area, so I can focus on that rather than prepare zillions of things and worried all the time until the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that we know that, this is an elementary school, but we don't know what grade they're in. This is a junior high or middle school or a high school. At least we know that much. But I think that knowing, their goal, we need more information from teachers. And teachers right now don't give it a lot. Some teachers, when we ask them, hey, can we get some information? I'll be interpreting. Oh, it's all private. It's all private. Yes, but I'm under the code of confidentiality. And so this would remain confidential. You can even take the student name off of it. If you'd like to give me more information, that would be great. Or you could ask your, whoever you're working with, what company you're working with, the language service provider to get more information for you. But I just wanted to say that some teachers, in my experience, are very, very helpful and others are not at all. And I think it might be because they're not ready for the meeting and they don't have it written out yet. And so it might be very last minute. And I think Sandy can answer that. And then when we're done with Sandy, we're going to go to Erica. So Sandy, is that true? Are they not willing to share more information with us? Or if we just asked, they would share some documents?
Yeah, if they're ready, they will. For me, I was never ready because I was teaching at the same time.
To be ready.
That's it.
Okay, we're going to go to Erica and then Leonardo.
First of all, thank you all very much for putting on this training. I'm actually participating remotely from another state, and I remotely interpret at IEP meetings. And I wanted just to remind the participants that when we go into the IEP meetings, we are not always aware of all of the participants. And so on some occasions, the parents may be in disagreement with the evaluations, and therefore they may have their own attorney present. And so what may seem like we may do all the preparation that we possibly can with the information we're given ahead of time from the teachers or the interpreter coordinator or whomever it may be. But at the end of the day, that's the nature of interpretation. Things are going to go in the direction that they're going to go, and we may not be advised of who is going to be present. So just keep in mind that because this is, in my experience, this is a federally mandated program under the Individuals for Disabilities Education Act. And so it is a great convergence of legal, medical, and then community interpretation. So we need to be aware that this is a binding document that is in place for the benefit of the kid, the student, for a year or a half a year, however long. So I just wanted to share that about the legal aspects of some of the terminology as well.
Thank you so much, Erica. And again, in our website, our link that we're going to give, there are terminologies that we're putting up, but yet because it's federally mandated, it's all over the internet. So any of you can search IEP or special education terminology Chinese, and all of a sudden, boom, you're going to find a lot. So you can even find, there's so many web pages of all the terminology in English as well. So you can just do your own search to prepare, but that still doesn't help you understand when the teacher is reading 100 miles an hour, 30 pages, from start to finish. That's not going to help. But one thing I want to tell everybody is that I have discussed it with Mark and with Sandy, that we really need to train the teachers of the special ed teachers, or the ones who are actually running the meeting, we need a meeting with them in order to explain what to watch out for, what things to do if you have the interpreter on video or phone. What's the difference between consecutive and simul? Some interpreters can't do simul, etc. So if you have any ideas of things that you'd like for us to help when we're having our meeting with the special ed, because I think Mark's going to make it happen, or Sandy.
Yeah,
And
please.
and
I
just let us know. You can email HITA, you can email me, whatever. Yeah, right, Sandy. And then
Yes,
we're gonna make
exactly,
this
because,
happen.
yeah,
Thank you.
one of my goals is to have a session at the annual Teachers Institute Day put on by the Teachers Union for teachers and student services coordinators, administrators, whoever, on how to work with interpreters at meetings and things that they need to consider. So yeah, please, your input is appreciated.
Right. And by an association, because we have this name behind us, this association, I think it's easier to get in to
Yeah.
these kinds of meetings and to be able to talk to them. So thank you very much. Now it's Leonardo's turn.
Yeah, thanks, Susie. Thank you guys for this
Maui.
training. That was very awesome. In my case, every time I go to an IEP meeting, whenever possible, I like to ask whoever's the person in charge if they can send me a draft or something, what they're going to be talking about in advance, at least a day or so I can kind of be familiar with not only the topics, but the lingual, because we talk about the lingual is very important, because we want to make sure as an interpreter that the parents above all understand what's going on for the benefit of the teacher. Or if I cannot, I try to go, 15, 20 minutes earlier, and I try to request a draft just to get some idea about what's going on. I think that would be very important and very helpful for us, the interpreter, if the teacher would be able to provide in advance a draft of the topic of something just for us, just to get an idea. By the time we go to the meeting, we know more or less what we're getting into, type of thing.
Especially when it's a Zoom meeting and you're not right there with the hard copy of the draft in your hand. A lot of times I have to interpret for meetings that are on other islands or on the other
That's
side
correct.
of this island.
Yes.
And I don't have it there. So those are
Yeah.
particularly challenging.
Yeah, I try to explain the teacher or whoever's in charge of the meeting, that we as an interpreter, we got some ethics and code of ethics. So don't worry about it. I will either shred the info, or when I get to the meeting, I hand it to you and you dispose of whatever you like.
Great,
Yep.
Great suggestion. Okay, we have Mary with her hand raised, and if any of you want to raise your hand, you can do it physically or just touch the hand raise button. So go ahead, Mary.
Thank you. To follow up on what Leonardo is saying, this is the point I was attempting very inarticulately to convey about the use of the word domain, right? In order to translate with contextually accurate the term domain, I would have needed to know when it first got used that it doesn't mean what the rest of the universe uses the word domain is. That's not in DOE, that's not in special ed, because I would have just said, copyrights law there's the terminology of public domain. So definitely that word domain would not, that context of domain would not have been translated accurately if I didn't know that the use of the word domain in special ed contextually means something else, right? So
But time for preparation. You need time to prepare.
Right.
And if you saw it ahead of time, you could have thought about that.
That Erica had made, and now Leonardo has also made, is that having the staff and teachers and faculty be more willing to share information and not feel like that we may be a threat to the protection of confidential information. So that again reiterates the importance of having special ed employees and staff members trained and understand. And what I've found very useful or very important in my experience in interpreting for IEPs, I think is will probably not be useful to most people, because most of the IEP translations I've done or interpreting I've done, it has been for one specific family where I translated for the same grandma for 3 different children from elementary school all the way to high school. And so this grandmother will request me specifically because we've had this relationship and we've had to adjust how we work with different staff members depending on the staff members' preferences on how we work. So having that relationship that doesn't cross the boundaries of our code of ethics, but having some flexibility in how we this grandmother and I work during making sure that she understands and her needs and her concerns are communicated will differ from other situations where I've translated for other IEP families. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. Anybody else? I don't know if this is possible, but anyone who wants to really get into DOE interpreting, if you never have done this yet, I think we can always get the okay. I mean, if you let me know or let other HITA members know, if you just send us an email, we can try to get you in to actually observe one of the meetings. As long, we have to get permission from the school and just say, this is a learning interpreter. She's shadowing me today, and she would like to sit in on the meeting. First, yeah. So, okay, great. If there's no further questions, I'm going to switch this a little bit to the last 5 minutes, but let's just wait for anybody else have anything to say. Some of you are experts.
I think that with regards to shadowing a new interpreter, shadowing at a meeting, as long as we give them advance notice, because everyone who's part of the team has the right to bring someone and just let them know who they are and what their purpose is for being there. A lot of times it's just a family friend who's there for moral support, even if they don't say anything, just the presence of someone, because these environments, these situations can get very tense and very emotional. A lot of them are contentious court cases behind them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like Erica said, sometimes they bring their own lawyers. Because they don't agree with what the school has decided. So it can be very scary. There also is, well, yeah, very good. Okay, if there's nothing else, I just want to use the last few minutes to say that we are going to put up a document for a link for everyone, and you can, in a minute, you can click on that link and you can see some of the things, some of the resources that we have put in this Google Drive for HITA. And it's just for the education part. There are other links for other places that once you become a member and once we start sending things out, if you are a member, you will have links to other resources. If you have a resource you'd like us to include that, you can email me directly if you'd like at suzeng@hawaii.edu. SUEZENG, and I'll write that out at hawaii.edu, or you can just go to the info@hawaiitranslators.org, and that's the one who sent you the link for this meeting. But I just wanted to say that some of you have a lot of experience and knowledge in a lot of different areas. I love the fact that, for example, when Erica said, she said she's doing long distance. and she does videos, telephone meetings. And this is the kind of things that we want to all learn about. So it would be great, those of you who have knowledge in various areas, to make a suggestion of what type of meeting we can, webinar we can have in the future. It doesn't have to be 2 hours, it could be 1 hour, and it could be a short webinar, long webinar. But if you have something to offer, we would love to know that. So we're really excited because today we had over 50 people join us, and that's really exciting. We do hope that you may consider joining HITA, if just to have you on our list, and so that we can do a lot more things in the future. Again, the resources is something we want to continue to build in the future. And so please check out the website. You can see some of the former workshops that we have put up there, but the next workshop will be in November. So every other month, the very first Saturday, we want to hold a webinar. Sometimes the speaker may not be able to do that day, so we will switch it out. But if you are a HITA member, we will be sending out and other places, and when we're having that webinar. It may not be free for non-HITA members in the future. We just thought this time it has to be free. We don't want to charge anyone, but we want to thank Mark especially for doing this and providing this on his own. And in the future, maybe we can get a good trainer and do some training for, like I said, note-taking techniques, simultaneous techniques. Maybe we can do, there's so much possibility. So we really want to thank all of you. And if any of you are interested in helping HITA, we really need, we do have a treasurer. She's not here today. She's traveling in California. Her name is Evangeline. A Filipino interpreter. But if any of you want to volunteer and help in the association, we would love it, because we do need people. So any final words from anybody? Once we get the PowerPoint, I think Mark was going to update. So the PowerPoint, he's going to send it to us. And for now, I'm just going to go ahead and upload this link. So make sure you copy it and put it somewhere on your phone or on your computer so that you can go to it later. Again, there are resources there that you can see, and also the PowerPoint will be uploaded later to that, and also this video. So the video will be a link to a YouTube video, and you can just watch it again in the future, but it will be a private link so that no one can go in unless they have the link itself. You can't search and find it. Okay, so it will be a private link on YouTube. So any questions of anything I've said or anyone said? Mark, you deserve a lei, and I'm sorry we can't give you one. But you also, and Sandy, you also deserve a lot for putting this together. You spend a lot of time and effort, and we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
All right.
Very much. Thank you much.
Thank
and
you,
I will send you an email with the links too.
Excellent. Okay,
Is that
great. And then we can upload it to all. Thank you again, everyone. Have a great rest of your day and a good luck in the future for interpreting. And again, if you want to get involved, just let us know. And I'll put my personal email on here in case any of you want to write to me directly. Okay, there you go. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
Hello.
Thank you.